Hey guys, welcome to the Field of 68 YouTube channel. If you like what you see here, hit that subscribe button and you'll get more college basketball content just like this. Doug, I'm going to you first on this one, man. What do
Yeah.
you make of this UConn team without Donovan Clingan and Samson Johnson stepped in? I think it was 18 points he had. I think it was a pretty impressive performance for him going up against a guy in Joel Soriano who was an all Big East caliber big guy.
First thing is, have we determined what's going on with Rick Pitino's hair color? Do we have a? Do we discuss a little bit? It's like a sandy brown there. It's like, man, somebody's that's when like everybody's scared of coach. Like, man, you tell him. I don't want to tell him. You tell him.
You know what
Somebody
it
put
is?
one
It's like
up.
when
He's
Brad Underwood went to
I'm
Illinois
not
and his
going
hair
to
got
that.
just
I'm
a
not
little
getting
bit
that.
orange. You know, I guess the color of the school that you go, it just wants to match in with the uniforms. That's what it is.
the Red Storm. I get it. I get it. There is the eerie parallels to last year, right, where they dominant non-conference, and all of a sudden you get in the league and get curb stomped the other night, and now you survive St. John's. So that's, I think, some of it. They're not going to be as good without Donovan Clingan because he's that good. But um, I just didn't. I mean, look, these games are always hard because it's right before break. I'm sure, despite the fact that they struggled at least on some level in Big East play last year, it's hard to get the fact that they're St. John's, and St. John's hasn't been great outside of the Michigan win to start the year as well. So there's some of that, but they don't really have a dude like Tristan Newton had been playing a level probably above how good he actually is, but they don't have a takeover a game guy. They just don't. And without Clingan, now all of a sudden, look, you start to go to your bench, and it's not as much. Obviously, when the guy that replaced him goes for 18, you're like, okay, but now whoever his backup is your third string big guy. So
Mm-hmm.
no one has depth in college basketball. It just doesn't exist. They're one of the deepest teams, and even they go about 7 or 8, in terms of quality player. But I think when you consider how quickly you had to turn around after getting beat pretty handily, the fact that you are going to be different, especially the defensive end, maybe more so than the offensive end. I still think they got into some of their stuff, and it's not a perfect team. I don't think anybody thought they would be as good as they were last year, and they're probably not. I think some of their early season success is probably a little bit more surprising because of some of the losses last year. But again, the landscape of the sport is I still think they'll have a chance to win it because they didn't actually beat any of the top teams to win the national championship last year. And even the top teams, we'll get to Arizona. Like, they're not dominant. They don't have a dude. So within this sport, they're not as good when you lose your center. And then, of course, when your backup becomes your starter, now his backup, that's a major step down. They have to change how they do things, especially the defensive end, because he's such a presence at the rim. St. John's, obviously, this is a game in which now all of a sudden they can erase everything. And Rick Pitino figures out his team. The guy knows what he's doing. And then I also think it's league play. And most league games are going to be like this.
McCall, winning is hard, right?
I'm not going to go there this early in the show. Okay, I'm not, and I'm going to be Mr. Positive, and you know how I always am. Winning is hard, but I said this the other night, and I want to go back on this statement because, when you saw the environment in there tonight, and I made the comment just about playing a conference game right before Christmas break, and where's your mind at? And as a coach, if you bring in, a low major team, if you're bringing in a bye game, you're very concerned about where your team is at mentally. You're very concerned. But you're playing a conference game versus Rick Pitino and St. John's, and you have them in your own arena, everybody's locked in. And that environment was unbelievable tonight. And that's the last game before Christmas break. If you're Danny Hurley, those guys, they can go on Christmas break, and everybody has a good break. They won the conference game after they lost the other night. So I go back on my statement the other night, like, you're better off playing a game like that right before Christmas than having a bye game where you're concerned about where's your team at mentally. I think, first of all, the spread was 11.5 in the game, which to me is crazy without Clingan, and you have Rick Pitino on the other sideline. I mean, that's unbelievable. They didn't shoot the ball well from the perimeter, but they found a way to win the game. I mean, the bottom line. And Coach Hurley's teams are going to defend. They're going to play with tremendous effort. Like Doug said, who's that dude? Who are you putting the ball in their hands with the game on the line? But they found a way to win the game without a starting 5-man who protects the rim. And they're going to have to learn how to play with him, because it sounds like he could be out here for not a significant period of time, but he's going to be out for, some more games. And they just got to find ways to win games without him. And that's what they did tonight. And, St. John's, are they the cream of the crop in the Big East? No. Do they have one of the greatest coaches in the history of college basketball? Yes. Who's going to inspire, who's going to figure out his team, who continues to figure out his team. And that 11.5-point spread today was like, are you kidding me? Without their 5-man? And that was a high-level Big East basketball game, which is what the Big East is going to be. And it's going to come down to the little things, who makes plays coming down the stretch of games, 50-50 balls and all things like that. And UConn found a way to do that and close the game out. And that's the most important thing.
Here's the thing, Rob, and Matt, you tell me if you agree or disagree. A lot of times, and this is why the net and any sort of statistical ranking of a team doesn't actually equate and compute, okay? Because you're different at every time of the year. And so take St. John's for a second. Like right now, despite the fact they haven't been great in the non-conference, it's a whole new life. Like, we're all in. Coaches figured it out, got a rotation. Now, if this exact same game is played without Clingan in February, and say St. John's is 3-10 in league, different ball game, because you got guys they're already in the portal. Even if they're not in the portal, they're already checked out, And right now, UConn was coming off of getting thumped. They're like, man, are we any good? And St. John's, probably a little bit of blood in the water, knowing what happened to UConn the other night, and no Clingan, and the fact that they have new life. So I think all of these things are true. Again, that doesn't excuse a team for not playing as well as they should, or losing a game, whatever. But what it does is it gives context to a game. And I mean, one of the best things about UConn is, here we are, December. What day is today? The 23rd?
23rd, yeah.
Right? And great atmosphere. Okay, you don't always get a great atmosphere on those games. Part of it is St. John's, part of it is Patino, part of it is they won the national championship. That one was Hartford tonight, right? So I mean, that was a good atmosphere. So you can't blame the fact that it's half full. It was good energy. They didn't shoot the ball well. 5 of 18 from 3. We mentioned Clingan, only 1 block shot. Okay, and St. John's had great energy because they still actually think, I mean, all we got to do is beat a couple of these top teams, and now we can get in the NCAA tournament. That's legitimately how it's going to work. So I think time of year sometimes can work in your favor, or can change the complexion of a game. And I think that's in addition to the Clingan injury, the loss earlier this week, but St. John's still believing, because they don't have to cancel the rest of their season yet, it is at least a partial factor as to why.
Yeah, we've kind of tiptoed around it. Clingan is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. And if you look at UConn's schedule, that means that best case scenario, he'll probably be back for Georgetown at home, more likely Wednesday, January 17th. Creighton at home. In the interim, UConn is going to play DePaul the day after New Year's, January 2nd. So they got a 9-day layoff. Then they get Butler away, Xavier away, and Georgetown at home. So it's not honestly the worst stretch.
That's a soft start to their schedule.
Yeah, if you look at the end of their schedule, their last 6 games are Marquette at home, Creighton away, Villanova at home, Seton Hall at home, Marquette away, Providence away, which is that's one way to end a conference play. One question I do have, and I think we kind of touched on the issues with Clingan and him being out. I mean, it's good. Sampson's got to step up. Yusuf Samgari has got to be capable of coming in and playing like 5 to 10 minutes. And I think we're going to see some Alex Caravan at the 5 here for stretches as well. My big question with UConn is that we are not seeing good shooting out of this team so far. They are 33% from 3 on the season. They were 5 for 18 tonight. Part of it is good shooters like Alex Caravan aren't really making shots. Part of it is Solo Ball has not been the guy that we thought he was going to be coming in. And I saw a stat going around the other day. They get more wide open threes than anybody at the high major level by 25%. So they average about 15 wide open threes per game, and the next best high major team is 12 wide open threes per game, and they're shooting about 32% of those threes. So just real quick on that, Is this something where it's fixable? Is that something where teams have kind of figured out, hey, we want to let those guys shoot, or is this just eventually it's going to regress to the mean? Doug, why don't you take that first, and Matt?
I think it's a matchup thing. I mean, we mentioned that you got Samson Johnson. I mean, he had that. You guys saw that naked side ball screen where he took. Was it 4 steps, Rob, or was it 5? I mean, it was.
It was about 7.
I can't believe it wasn't called a trap. But the point is that there was literally nobody home because that's how you play UConn, right? You hug up to their shooters, okay, and if they throw it in the post, they throw it on a slip. Like, we'll live with that. And you lost one of the great shooters in college basketball from last year. But I think, is it fixable? Yeah, you mentioned it, right? You put Caravan at the 5, and now all of a sudden you got to guard all 5 spots. It's really hard. The problem with that is now you have 0 rim protection. So you got to do fainting goat defense at the rim and take charges. So you're going to put out one fire.
2024, there's no charges anymore.
I know, nobody calls charges, so nobody takes them. You just got to jump and do verticality. But you're going to put out one fire and start another one. So yeah, it's going to be an issue. They are not as good a shooting team, but I think there's a couple different parts to it. The first is that, again, you mentioned you got some young players. I don't care how good a shooter. Very few guys as freshmen come in and shoot the ball well. They just don't. Just the reality to it. The more reps you get, the more time you get in the gym, the more comfort you get, the more the game slows down. So when you're throwing out there 2 true freshmen at times, like they did tonight with Ball and Castle, like, you're just not going to shoot the ball great. Additionally, people are hugging up to them. I still think people struggle to guard their stuff because they really move it, and they have a lot of different false motions and movement to it. And I think that you're trying to figure out one end or the other. And Danny knows that you're going to win based upon your defense, even if the offensive adjustment will help you look better and make it look prettier. It's ultimately going to hurt you on defense. And I don't think this team is as dynamic as last year's team at either end, that he thinks he can get away with being bad on defense. So I think some of it is lineup specific as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Doug on that too. There was a play in tonight's game when Samson Johnson got a dunk off a single side pick and roll. And you could tell clearly with Donovan Clingan being out of the game. I mean, Rick Pitino and his staff said, hey, look, we're taking threes away. There was a wide open single side pick and roll where there's 3 guys on the weak side of the floor, and they just gave up the dunk because they're holding up to those shooters. There was no, where was the protection coming from? And I mean, I wrote it in my notes during the game. St. John's was like, man, they just gave up a dunk. Where's the protection coming from on that single side pick and roll? And then it's like, wait, they're hugging up on those shooters. They're not going to give up threes. And you can clearly tell with Donovan Clingan being out of the game that's Rick Pitino's game plan. Like, look, we're fine giving up 2s. We're not fine with giving up 2s, but if we give up a 2, that's fine. We're not going to give up 3s. And that's why those guys are all pressured out on the shooters, and there was no help. The tag should have came from the bottom guy and the protection on the weak side, and it wasn't there. So I don't think it's a thing to be concerned about. I think, Coach Hurley runs great stuff. They get open threes. I think they're going to continue to get open threes. They didn't shoot a great percentage today. They've made threes on the year throughout the course of the season, and there's a lot of basketball left to be played. So to be concerned about three-point shooting, I think with Donovan Clingan out, though, that's what teams are going to do. Take away threes. Let's make this game. We're going to play it in the 60s. Let's see if we can hold them. But we cannot give up threes, because if we do, then it's going to be a long night.
So what you're telling me is I shouldn't overreact to this, McCall?
Do you have the T-shirt?
No, I gotta get one of those. We gotta get a Matt McCall. I don't overreact to the T-shirt. All right. Thank you for watching the Field of 68. If you've enjoyed what you've seen here, hit that like button, share this link with your friends, or check out the description for some other places that you can consume Field of 68 content.